Hello everyone, it's me Uncle John. Today I'm going to read S66012, The Gray-Eyed Goddess, Chapter 6, The Old Man of the Sea. The horses stopped at the gate of the palace. Telemachus and Nestor's son could hear sounds of a celebration coming from inside. Servants greeted the two strangers at the gate. The young men were welcomed and treated as grandly as royal visitors. Telemachus knew that this was the custom of all the Greeks. Wandering travelers received the greatest courtesy, for a man never knew when he himself might be a stranger in another's house. Servants washed and anointed the two young men with sweet-smelling oil. They gave them the finest purple robes. Then they led them into the great hall. Telemachus marveled at what he saw there. The splendor seemed greater than that of the sun or the moon. Telemachus and Nestor's son were seated near the king. They were served rich foods and golden goblets filled with wine. "Welcome," said King Menelaus. "Have your supper, then you shall tell me who you are and from where you have come from." As Telemachus ate, he looked about the great hall. The room gleamed with bronze, gold, and amber, and with ivory and silver. This palace seems like the very home of Zeus," he whispered to his friend. King Menelaus overheard Telemachus' words. "I mustn't be compared with the god of Olympus," he said. "After the Trojan War, I traveled to many countries and gathered many treasures, but none of them take away the sorrow I still felt for my comrades who were slain by the Trojans or who died on their voyage home. There is one I grieve for more than all the rest, for I have heard how his family still aches for his return. His mother died of her grief. His wife and his father have nearly gone mad with sorrow. Even his son mourns night and day for him, though the boy was but a babe when his father sailed away to war." Telemachus covered his face to hide his tears. The king had perfectly described the family of Odysseus. At that moment, Queen Helen came down from a perfumed room and entered the hall. Looking as beautiful as the most exquisite goddess, she took a seat beside the king. "What is the stranger?" she asked her husband. "Does not one of them look remarkably like the great Odysseus?" Nestor's son nodded. "Indeed, this is the son of Odysseus," he said. "He is shy in your presence. My father, Nestor, has sent me with him to seek news of his father. In all Ithaca, there is no one to help him fight the injustice he faces." Menelaus was greatly moved to learn the identity of his young guest. "Your father was much loved," he told Telemachus. Then the king and queen, Telemachus, and even the son of Nestor, wept for the lost warrior. "He was a great warrior," said Helen. "When I was held captive in Troy, it was his bravery and cunning that rescued me." "I," said Menelaus, "I remember well how he dared to hide in the great wooden horse. Under the cover of night, he unlocked the gates of Troy, so we could lay siege to the city." Telemachus nodded. "Your Majesty, my father was very brave indeed," he said sadly, "but all his courage and cunning could not save him from his fate. Let us go to our beds now and seek peace from this sorrow in sleep." Queen Helen ordered her maids to make beds for the guests in the gallery of the palace. Servants led the two young men from the great hall by torchlight and offered them blankets and fine woolen gowns. Weary from their long journey, Telemachus and the son of Nestor finally lay down to rest. Before dawn, Menelaus rose and went to the place where Telemachus slept. He woke the young man and spoke softly to him. "Tell me exactly why you came to see me in my palace. How can I help you?" Telemachus told the king about suitors who had greatly moved into his father's home. "If your father knew this," said Menelaus, "he would tear them to pieces." "Do you have news of him?" asked Telemachus. "Can you tell me anything?" "Pray do not soften your words. I will tell you what I know. There is an island in the sea near Egypt where many voyages stop to rest before sailing on. My ship landed there after the war. I was lost and did not know if any of my comrades had journeyed safely back home. One day, while I was wandering alone, a sea nymph told me to speak to her father, the old man of the sea. Who is he?" "He's a sea god. He's a Poseidon's herdsman who tends to the seals. There is a time of day when he rises to the surface to count his flock. To catch him, one must hold him fast, for he can change his shape into many forms. He can be any of the creatures that move about the earth. He can be water or fire, but if you can hold him fast when he is himself again, you may ask him your question. Did you catch the strange sea god? Telemachus asked with wonder. Yes, I waited until he emerged to count his seal. Then I rushed upon him and seized him, said the king. He quickly turned into a lion, then a snake, then a leopard, then a boar. He became running water and then a tree, but I held him fast until he changed back into himself again. When I asked him how I might get home, he gave me wise advice. When I asked about the fate of my friends, he told me about those who had died. When I wept with grief, he told me that one great warrior was still alive. He said that Odysseus was trapped on the island of Calypso. The goddess was keeping him there against his will. Telemachus rejoiced to hear that his father must still be alive. Menelaus told him more about his journeys, then took his leave. Left alone, Telemachus was restless with excitement. Is my father still on Calypso's island? He wondered, should I go in search of him there, or should I return home at once and tell my mother the good news? Chapter 7, Calypso's Island. Far away on Calypso's island, Odysseus sat on a rock and wept on this day. Like all others for the past 7 years, he yearned for home. With his face buried in his hand, he did not see the bright light swoop through the air and skim the waves like a gull. He did not see Hermes, the messenger god, take shape before him. Carrying his golden spear and wearing his golden winged sandals, Hermes began moving lightly over the island. He stepped through Calypso's sacred woods, where owls, falcons, and seagulls called from the branches of elders, the poplars, and cypresses. He moved through Calypso's sweet-smelling garden, over beds of violets and herbs. Finally, he came to the entrance of the goddess's cave. Hermes pushed past the hanging grapevine and stepped inside. The scent of cedar and sandalwood filled the air. The fair-haired goddess was sitting at her loom before her hearth, singing a song. When she looked up, she gave the messenger god a radiant smile. Hermes, you have honored me with a visit, she said. Sit and let me offer you food and drink. Calypso served Hermes ambrosia and red nectar, food for the gods. After he had refreshed himself, Hermes told Calypso the purpose of visit. Today on Olympus, the goddess Athena called together all the gods. He said she is greatly worried about Odysseus, king of Ithaca. He's been kept from his home and family too long. She says that now his enemies are planning to murder his son. Calypso, Zeus has heard the words of his daughter. He commands you to release your captive. The goddess rose in anger, but Hermes continued. Zeus has decreed that Odysseus must return home on his own strength. No god is allowed to speed his journey. He must build a raft and ride the waves for 20 days to the land of Sicaria. From there, he can sail on to Ithaca and avenge the wrongs done to his family. The gods of Olympus are angry with me, said Calypso. They don't like to believe a goddess can fall in love with a mortal man, but I saved Odysseus' life. Calypso stared fiercely at Hermes for a moment, then she lowered her eyes in a defeat. I know I cannot defy the will of Zeus. If Zeus commands it, Odysseus shall leave my island. In all good faith, I will give him the advice he needs to begin his journey home. Hermes bowed, then he took swift leave of the mournful goddess. Calypso set out to look for Odysseus. She found him on the rocks, weeping. She sat beside him and spoke gently. You shall no longer stay here, yearning for your home. I will send you away. Go, cut beams of wood, make a large raft to carry you over the sea. I'll give you wine, bread, water, and clothing. After his many years of being held captive, Odysseus did not trust the Calypso's words. Not even a well-made ship could safely sail these waves, he said. Will you swear a sacred oath that you are not trying to harm me? The goddess took his hand. I swear by heaven and earth and by the waters of the underworld, that I want no harm to come to you, Odysseus, she said. Having sworn her oath, Calypso rose and quickly walked away. Odysseus followed her to her cave. Calypso bade her servants prepare a meal. Her handmaid maidens served her ambrosia and nectar, food for the deathless gods. Calypso herself served Odysseus meat and wine, refreshment for mere mortals. Odysseus, if you would only promise to stay with me and marry me, I would make you to an immortal being, Calypso said. You'd live forever, fair goddess. Why would I want to live forever far from my home without my wife and son, he asked. I can't imagine that your wife is more beautiful than I am. Goddess, don't be angry with me. What you say is true. My wife is a mortal woman. She's not as beautiful as you. Still, for 7 years, I have thought of nothing but getting home to her. Desperate to keep Odysseus on her island, Calypso gave him one more reason to stay. If you sail for home, Odysseus, you will find many troubles along the way. For the gods will not aid your journey, she said. The end.